Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I'm really pleased to have you all with us. My name is Maximus Belmiga. I'll be your host for today's session. And we're going to be talking about sort of like the Inflo and Mercia collaboration and taking a practical look into, how that has come together and take a practical deep dive into the tool. Before we get started, let me give you a quick overview of what to expect. We've got a really great lineup of speakers joining me today. So I've got David Goode, who's our head of Workpapers solution at Inflo. So thank you for joining us. And Dave Rowley, who's a technical consultant at Mercia, who I'm sure a lot of you will be familiar with as well. So thank you both for coming together. And together we're going to be talking you through how firms are transforming their audit methodology, delivery using a cloud-based, fully embedded solution. The objectives for today's session are quite simple. We want to show you how a truly digital methodology looks like in practice, the benefits it brings to firms and engagement teams, and how the approach can drive consistency, quality, and efficiency across your audit process. Now, before we start and before we dive into today's content, just a few quick housekeeping notes to get the most out of the session. Good news, the webinar is being recorded and we'll share the recording with you afterwards. As long as with any sort of relevant handouts or follow-up materials that are promised. We're using Zoom webinar today, so you'll notice a couple features at the bottom of your screen. So the Q&A panel is where we'd love you to submit your questions throughout the session. I will be monitoring that throughout the discussion and surface any questions to our speakers during the demo or at the Q&A that we have towards the end of the session. And you'll also see a chat box as well. So we'll use that for any sort of technical support, quick links during the session, and feel free to say hello to me and let me know where you're joining from. I think the chat is private between us, but the Q&A panel is open so everyone can see your questions. Any technical issues, try refreshing Zoom, reconnecting. If that doesn't work, you can drop us a message in the chat. And we want this session as well to be as interactive as possible. So please send your questions as we go. We'll answer as many as we can live. As I said, if we don't get to all of them, we'll do it in the post-event follow-up. So with that, let's get started. So today's session is going to be quite a technical one, and intentionally so. We're going to be showing you how a trusted audit methodology, which is Mercia, can be delivered in a truly digital way through the collaboration with Inflo. This isn't just about uploading the Word and Excel templates into a cloud platform. It's about really deeply embedding that methodology into the technology so that it's got a clear workflow, and it actively guides auditors throughout the engagement. And to set the scene, let's talk about why so many firms are moving to, cloud-based methodologies and cloud-based solutions. Now, as firms modernize their audit processes, what we're seeing is a major shift from that sort of paper-based static digital workflows where you've got lots of Word and PDF templates in a sort of legacy-based software. The two don't really talk to each other, they're quite separate. And what we're trying to move and seeing firms transition to is where they're moving to platforms where the methodology leverages the technology and is truly integrated in its approach to the audit. Some of the challenges that you're probably familiar with, or we see when working with firms, is there's a clear lack of standardization across teams and offices. People have their own unique templates across their different audit portfolio. There's challenges with version control, review processes. They take time and can introduce risk into the audit. And then there's limited visibility on the audit status. There's limited visibility for reviewers to monitor progress, see how far are we through that particular area of the audit, because everything's captured in those sort of templates and checklists. Now, by contrast, digital work papers and bringing structure and intelligence to that process, you get real-time collaboration. So being able to see the status of the audit, where people are working, who's assigned what work. Built-in guidance and compliance checks and automation. So if I answer something here, it's going to go and auto answer across other areas of my audit file. and then automated audit trails and version history as well to really strengthen documentation and oversight. And that's where the Inflo and Mercia partnership comes in. It isn't just a simple digitalization of the Mercia methodology. It's a purpose-built integration designed to guide the auditors through every stage of the engagement with clarity and consistency. So taking that familiar Mercia methodology that is leading across the UK and partnering that into a solution and leveraging the technology that Inflo brings to the audit. And importantly, this transition isn't theoretical. It's already proven across many firms of all sizes, which I've been working with to support that structure that we've supported through implementation and adoption of both the methodology and the technology. Now, for the heart of the session, I'm going to, in a moment, hand over to the two Daves for a practical, in-depth demonstration of how the Mercia methodology is embedded within Inflo. So Dave and David will walk us through the real audit journey, showing both the blank and in-progress files to illustrate those real-world scenarios, looking at sort of planning, risk assessment, how the analytics are embedded through that methodology and through the platform. I'm going to be jumping in alongside with questions. I'm going to be monitoring that Q&A box and sharing some of experience from me working with firms and then from you guys in the audience as well. So with that, Dave's, I'm going to hand over to you and we can get into the platform.
Sorry, David, you go ahead.
No, I was saying you're going to start sharing your screen and take it away, and I'll jump in when we can.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is first of all, can everybody see that? Is the screen that screen share working okay? I'm going to take that as a yes. So we'll start just by looking at the Inflo platform. Some of you may be familiar with this, you may have used it before, but just for those of you that are new to this, let's just take a look at the landing point. So this is where you would land when first arriving in Inflo. You can see I've got a dummy engagement here that I've set up for demo purposes. I know I'm talking to a room full of auditors, but please don't get too involved in auditing this. This is just one I've created for testing purposes. So please don't leave me any review notes. I can assure you that this is not intended to be a live engagement. This is where you'd land at the beginning. I just wanted to touch on a couple of features for those of you that are new to Inflo. Just want to touch on some of what Max was talking about in the intro. Clearly, one of the key benefits really of moving to a cloud-based solution is that project management piece. And Inflo, you can see here, gives you a number of really useful tools before you've even kind of gone into the main Workpapers module or analytics sections. You've got some really interesting pointers here that are going to be very interesting to auditors, I'm sure. As you can see, you've got here some dashboards. So essentially, this is going to really help you track the progress of the audit. You can see here, you can toggle by my team and by client. This is referring to the collaborate module. So that's a module you'd use to request and share working papers. So the days of pitching up on site with a USB drive, or I'm actually old enough to remember getting the working papers on a CD. So those days are long gone now. You can do this over Teams, and you're able to over Inflo, and you're able to track the progress and track due dates and leave comments and have a dialogue around that, which I'm sure many people will appreciate from a project management point of view. And it'll also give you a summary here, just hidden behind our faces. You'll see here there's a section that will enable you to track. It will highlight any changes, so it'll give you notifications of anything that's changed recently at a glance when you log in. You've then got the module selection console here. Today we're going to spend a lot of time talking about work papers. So this is where you'll see the Mercia methodology embedded within Inflo. But just to give you a walk through some of the other modules here, which are obviously key features of the Inflo platform, We've got Collaborate, which we touched on briefly. This is where you can share and request working papers. So obviously a very useful function from a project management perspective. Ingest is where you'll go into upload general ledger data that has an inbuilt completeness functionality, inbuilt mapping. So that's going to enable you to check that your general ledger is complete, map that back to accounts, and also you're able to drive sampling from that. So once you've created that ingest process, you've obviously got huge audit quality and efficiency gains from being able to very easily analyze out populations, reconcile subledgers, for example, to the main population, and drive your testing, your analytics, your scoping, and other areas. You've also got some inflow analytics sections here as well. So Flux is where you can automate some of the analytical review process. Just to talk through some of the other key ones as well, Detect is a data analytics program. Typically, you might use that for journals testing, but there is also some scope to look at do similar processes on other populations. So looking for large and unusual transactions. You've got Select here, which drives the sample selection process. So that's going to automate your sample selection process. And then Revenue Cascade is another key one as well, enabling you to do some revenue analytics. We're not going to go into those in detail today, but obviously just to flag up that those are integrated within this. So there'll be hyperlinks within your work papers module and prompts within the Mercia methodology that's embedded in there to consider the use of data analytics, and that's in line with the Mercia methodology. So before we go too much further on, I'm just going to show you how you can select, how you can set up a new file. I've done a bit of a Blue Peter moment. Here's one I've created earlier, a demo. So the way to kind of use one of our Mercia template packs, our Mercia content packs, is if you jump into the work papers module, the first time that you enter that, once you've created a new engagement, it will give you the option to select content packs. I've got some ones in draft, so these are actually the Mercia summer update packs. They're about to be rolled out. So clearly we update our methodology regularly on a paper basis, and those updates are also rolled out across our paperless providers, including Inflo. So if I was to select our main Mercia audit methodology, our main Mercia audit content pack, and go in there, that will then, this is just letting me know that it's a demo engagement. But if I show you what it looks like when we're set up, that should then bring in the work papers content map. It's predictably now just whirring away. But yeah, that seems to have worked. Just another thing that I will flag up, we'll go into the main kind of how the methodology embeds shortly. But if I just flag up here, if we look at the guidance section, you've got access as well as a subscriber. You'll have a URL there that will take you to an Inflo No page, which will enable you to download Word versions of the Mercia audit procedures manuals, example accounts, example template engagement letters, disclosure checklists in a paper format. And you'll also be able to have HTML versions of those. So that's where you'll find our guidance, our kind of detailed guidance on applying the Mercia methodology, if you subscribe to the product. What I'm going to do now is just flip to a sort of part completed engagement, just to demo some of the other areas of the file. So this is kind of what your engagement will look like. I'm just going to minimize the video there just to make it a bit easier to see what it looks like. This is once you've gone into the work papers module, and as you can see, you can toggle here between planning, response to risk, and completion. And then these sections here are where the Mercia methodology is embedded. So if you drop down on these headings, you'll see it will go to a number of kind of smaller guidance procedure headers. And if we just walk into a couple of these so you can see what it looks like, you'll see this is where you've got the kind of Mercia text here. You've got the options to sign off. So we preset different responses. So particularly at the planning stage, you'll have a number of kind of preset responses. You can add memos here as well. And there's also the option to attach files, attach working papers, templates, and so on and so on, as you're going through the engagement. Just to sort of talk through the other tabs, as you'd expect, you've got response to risk, and if we toggle through as well, you've got a completion section, and those kind of work in a very similar way. I'll flag up here as well, disclosure checklist. So you've got an automated disclosure checklist. You'll be pleased to hear, not proposing to go through that in detail. I don't want to put you to sleep today as auditors. I'm sure you probably don't want to see me go through a disclosure checklist, but this is automated. It uses Inflo's dependency function to enable you to tailor that, to tailor it correctly and only bring in the relevant areas. And then it also enables you to fill that out in an automated way and add memos where you need to justify an unexpected response, for example. And that obviously makes managing a particular area of the file, the project, a lot more straightforward. So if we jump back to planning and just talk a little bit about how the risk assessment stage works. The first thing that I would flag up really is that we've not had to kind of crowbar the methodology into this as a paperless provider. It's very faithful to Mercia's paper methodology. So if you're familiar with the paper methodology, you'll be pleased to hear that it works in a very similar way. One thing to flag up is those of you that are familiar with the Mercia methodology. The one thing that Inflo doesn't do is have a distinction between current and permanent file. So some of the permanent file stuff that you might be used to from Mercia's paper version or other methodology providers is integrated within these planning sections. But there is the option to roll forward as you set up a recurring engagement, for example. You do have the option to roll forward some of those in order to kind of get the benefit of work that you've done and review things and update to make sure that it remains accurate. If we then run down as well, I mean, as you'd expect, you've got your kind of key kind of information gathering areas at the planning stage: appointment and reappointment, preliminary audit, risk assessment, and you'd fill these in a very similar way to what you'd expect from the Mercia paper methodology. So really just adding memos to those and having those reviewed and signed off. But just to give you some sight of kind of what the risk assessment and scoping area looks like in Inflo, you've got this risk and response advanced screen. So this really is once you've done your ingest stage, you've mapped everything to the relevant accounts areas, got your trial balance in there. You can then start to scope in areas. And you know, as you'd expect, so that'll pull information from a trial balance and enable you to scope in areas that you want to. And then just to give you an idea of kind of what that looks like in practice, if we look at some of these risk areas, you've got a risk spectrum there that you can use to set your level of risk and identify which areas are significant risks or similar. And you can also import and bring in work programs and responses from the Mercia content pack. David,
Sorry to interrupt your flow, Dave. Just going to jump in a little bit there. If you could just zoom out on the browser, I know you're probably sharing on your smaller screen, and you've probably got two. Might just look a little cleaner there, particularly with the risk detail view.
Yeah, no, that's a good call. Let me jump this to the other screen, David. It's probably easier.
Oh, okay.
Just give me a moment. I'll just do that just now, just whilst you're talking.
Yeah, just saw some of the risk detail views there.
No, you're quite right.
Quite cut off on that bit, but it's just the browser zoom is all that was doing that.
I will jump to the other screen. Apologies if it looks like.
No worries, I didn't mean to interrupt your flow on that. I just thought on that last screen, it was a bit zoomed in all the way, but on the last screen, I was like, oh, that one definitely needs. There we go.
Appreciate that. So is that better? You can see the whole. Probably see the whole.
Looks much better now
down there. So and you've got some. You know, this is obviously very useful viewpoint here. You can see how this is set out. It will flag up in this view where you've got accounting estimates required, for example, where your response, where you set in your response to risks to have data analytics. You know, where you said you've got substantive tests of detail, analytical procedures, and so on. And this then drives, as you'd expect, if we come out of here, this will then drive your response to risk section. So if we take a look at some of these areas, for example, going concern, you'll have kind of the main audit programs in here with your memos, and this will very much mirror what you'd expect to see in the Mercia paper manual, paper methodology. David, was there anything you? Sorry, I realised I'm doing a lot of talking at the moment. Was there anything that you wanted to jump in? I don't know if you wanted to talk about Inflow High, perhaps, with the
Yeah,
the
no
kind of.
worries. Yeah, I think the key thing, if you pop back to the main planning screen, in fact, let me see if I can do that joint control thing just to save you steering as well. There we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, there we go. So yeah, as you mentioned at the beginning, you've got the planning work programs down the left-hand side, and it's just really following that top-down approach, following the tried and trusted methodology that you've not had to shoehorn into the platform, but the platform's architecture nicely lets that go in. But I just wanted to call out these bits over here on the right-hand side that you don't need to know when to jump into these advanced screens, we call them. We were just in the risk and response area here. But I just wanted to highlight that as you're working down through these work programs, as you're following the procedures and the guidance and everything that you're familiar with, the bit that's different is that there are blue hyperlinks within them that take you across to different areas. So whether that is these over here, and so as Dave was showing within the risk assessment, it took us to risk and response. But even before then, when you're doing your planning analytics, it will take you out of this module and it will take you to flux and metrics, which were what Dave showed on the dashboard. But you can also access them from here if you want to manually go to them, or the hyperlinks within the work programs take you there. So it's all very integrated. If you're seeing it for the first time today, I can appreciate you might be feeling a little overwhelmed, going, there's just so much on screen, there's so many different routes to go. But it only takes five or 10 minutes of being in the platform to start feeling how intuitive it is. Lots of different roads lead to Rome. And ultimately, everywhere that the user might want to get to that point, we've tried to make the navigation there pretty easy. So when we're showing you all of the different points very quickly, you might be going, whoa, there's loads, but just note that it is very intuitive. All you need to really follow is top-down planning, response, completion. That's the logical order. You can jump around when you're a bit more experienced and do planning out of order. You can start doing some response work before you finished all the planning if it's appropriate, and interim work, for example. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that kind of navigation aspect that we focused on the left-hand side, but that's what this right-hand side over here is all about. But
David,
yes, thank you. Oh, go on, Max.
Yeah, and a quick question in the chat, which I think would be now a good time to ask is, obviously we've got a lot of modules in Inflow. Do you have to use all of those modules, or can I maybe just use the work papers with a trial balance and not use the analytics? Do I have that choice?
That's an excellent question. I'll answer from a platform functionality perspective, and then Dave can jump in from a methodology perspective as well. So the only requirements within the software and the coding is that to use work papers, you really should have ingested a trial balance. If you haven't ingested a trial balance, then you are really pushing water uphill. It works, but it is really, really manual because you're having to put in all the balances and the risks and everything manually. Once you have a trial balance in place, then it populates your lead schedules. It populates all of these balances here as to how you've mapped them to the chart of accounts. And from there, you can then perform the full work papers audit without using anything else within the software. You don't even need the general ledger to be in, you just need the trial balance. However, the more data you put in and the more of the other things you use, that is where you reap the benefits, basically. And Dave, I don't know if you want to talk around how the methodology is worded into how prescriptive is it to force you versus recommend versus here's an option.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I'll just kind of reiterate, having prior to joining Mercia, I did work in practice for a number of years and did use the Inflow platform. So I can second David's comments there from a practical experience perspective, that it is very intuitive. It's surprising how quickly you can jump into being able to get used to using it. But just touching on what we were talking about just now in terms of kind of do you have to use all the modules? I mean, the simple answer to this is no. I would echo David's sentiments there that I think in order to get the best out of Inflow, you absolutely should be using the ingest module. The kind of efficiency and quality gains that you'll get from doing that ingest process, from using that TB mapping process to drive your testing, possibly using Inflo High to scope are very large. So you'll get very significant gains in sort of quality, efficiency, and also just user experience. I think from teams not having to kind of repeat some of these processes and sort of do multiple reconciliations and a lot of fiddling around with spreadsheets, which I'm sure we'd all rather be kind of moving on to higher value and more sort of risky areas of the audit. So yeah, absolutely. I think the the ingest is key. It's a key area, and that will also enable you to drive things like select. So again, once you've successfully ingested your data, I think you'd want to use select in order to select samples. But the simple answer here really is you don't have to do that. As you can see, David's kind of selected gone into the preliminary analytical review area, just to give you an example of some of the how the Mercia guidance breaks into this. And you can see there some of the responses. You've got the option to not use ADA, so you can see at the bottom there we have given you that function. ADA will not be used, and if that's selected, it will actually. You can see the little the hand pointing downwards. There are dependencies there linked to that. So one of the great things about Inflo is if you select a certain response, it can drive other responses and save you having to kind of click, rewrite multiple memos to explain that you're not taking a particular course of action. So there's some time saved there. And ultimately, yeah, absolutely, there's no requirement to use the analytics modules. You can select that you will do some analytics, but you're going to use an in-house solution if that's better, or an alternative solution. Or you have got the hyperlinks there that you can see at the top that will link you to Inflo Flux or Inflo Metrics, just to kind of give a bit of an overview, bit of oversight into kind of Mercia's philosophy on this. Mercia, we try not to be prescriptive about this. Ultimately, Mercia's methodology, Mercia's concept of audit really is about empowering users to make the right choices, the right judgments for the engagement that they're on. So we're all really about trying to enable you to create a bespoke solution, a bespoke approach that really suits the circumstances that you're working with, rather than kind of trying to adapt a one-size-fits-all approach. There's no, we don't sort of crowbar in analytics for the sake of it. So there's no kind of expectation that you'll use this just because. It absolutely is about making those judgments and reviewing the situation, understanding the circumstances, understanding the technology, the level of sophistication of the client that you're working with, and determining what the right approach is. So you absolutely can work just purely with the Workpapers module, ingest, and just run through the manual as you would a paper version, and you're still getting the benefits there of the audit trail. You're still able to use Collaborate, you're still able to use the dashboards that will evidence the audit progress. So you're still getting the benefit of a huge number of features. You're still getting the Mercia tried and tested methodology, but you're also not being pushed into use, overcomplicating things if you're not in a circumstance where that's appropriate. So hopefully that answers that particular question.
Wonderful. And just to show how that looks from we've seen it on the preliminary analytics there, but if I go back into this risk and response view, in the response types that you can choose and plan in, this is where you can see audit data analytics is one of the types of responses that you can choose. And so within the methodology, typically detect would be the way that you would approach audit journals testing, just because the value and the automation of that approach is very good and almost too good to pass up. I can see within here you've got revenue cascade planned within revenue. However, the option could be that you don't have that work program and instead you do a purely substantive, or maybe a controls and substantive, that kind of approach is within. That's for you to plan as part of the audit, rather than being forced into it, the same template approach for every audit. The library is there for you to use. But if you don't mind, Dave, I'll just quickly show that library as well, because this is the Mercia library. I'll show the risks first.
Yeah.
So when you go to add new risks, you can see some of these library risks have already been imported, but there are others within the library that you can bring in as well. And it just so happens that because we've kind of finalized the risk and response, I have to go to the response phase in order to see the library now. So I'll just go to income here. Where do we do it from? From here. And then if I just go to show you the library of work programs as well, response work programs, here you can see that you've got different ones available within the library. And you could even filter by type as well. If you've got different types, this one's only got a small number. But when there was lots and lots in different areas of the library, you can see that there are different types you can filter by. So you can choose whether to bring in audit data analytics or not.
Now, just whilst we're on this topic and we're looking at some of those substantive responses, David and Dave, the question in the chat is, maybe I don't want to use the audit data analytics, which is absolutely fine, but I've obviously got to do my substantive test of details. How have you embedded the sampling, like the Mercia sampling selection into Inflo? And how does the select module also follow that same principle?
Yeah, I can pick that up. So yeah, absolutely. Select. Perhaps if we just have a quick look at that again. I'm just going to reiterate my previous advice. This is just set up purely for kind of demo purposes. So please don't take this as a kind of representative audit file, as it were. So this is what select looks like. And as you'll see here, at the top, once you've completed your general ledger ingest, you'll have it'll tell you that you've done ingest there. You'll have the option to reconcile. So for these, where you've got the option to bring in these are really just some kind of suggested subledgers that you could bring in. You've got this reconcile step here to prove completeness. You can download some files as well once you've kind of put this into the Inflo schema that you need to put in. It will enable you to bring that out and you can add it to your file. Or you can add some tests down here. Now, just to kind of give you an idea of what this looks like, in simple terms, yes, this absolutely does follow the Mercia methodology. You've got your kind of sampling here. You've got threshold, judgmental, coverage. So it's different ways that you can choose to gain assurance, but really probably most people, I think, if you're familiar with the Mercia methodology, will be interested in sampling or judgmental. So judgmental is exactly what it sounds like. You'll probably be familiar with the Mercia working paper that you'll have seen on the Mercia paper version, which gives you that guidance around how to arrive at a sample size. And if you run through judgmental, you'll see that there's some options here for filtering out transactions. For example, if from certain locations, certain classification types, if you want to narrow down, focus in on that on a particular population, and then you can bring that through to here, and this will literally just enable you to by hand select a number of transactions if you want to take that judgmental approach. There are also options to select random sampling. For example, if you can kind of narrow down if you've got a large number that you want a judgmental sample from, and you've already determined the sample size, you're able to just filter out your kind of qualitative and quantitatively significant transactions and use that to select the right number. You don't have to do that by hand. You can do a random selection. Alternatively, you've also got interval sampling built in there. So if you went down the sampling road as opposed to judgmental, it will give you that option to use monetary unit sampling in order to kind of bring in that statistical that statistical sampling approach. So yeah, the testing is absolutely in line with the sample selection is in line with Mercia, and you'd add a test down here, and you can link that back into your individual sections within the main work papers module. Just to touch on something else that came up within that question, which I think is relevant, just around the how you go about documenting the work. I think one of the other kind of key areas, the key benefits really that you're getting by adopting this approach is that option to perhaps if we just pick one at random and just go into this audit program. I mean, I think the other key area here is this is how you can evidence your sign off. So you've got your procedures here. you can select and then, say it's been completed, and then add in your additional evidence here. So you've got a option here to add in a memo. So if you want to add some additional context around the work, or just a brief explanation of the work that's been done, you can do that here. You can also add an attachment, so this will enable you to add something from your device or link to an existing file that's somewhere else in the file. You can add that there, and then you've got the option to save as work in progress or save as final and send that through to review. And again, that works on a similar basis. The reviewer also gets the option to sign off in a similar way. In terms of review points, where you see this little file icon, this will take you to the option to add in a review point. That will open you something in an additional window, and you can add the review point there and click create. And if I just take you to some examples of where we've got some kind of dummy review points put in, you can see a couple here, and it will give you the audit trail. So it will show you, when it was raised by, when it was due. The options here, you can opt to remove it once you've closed it down. You can opt to keep it on the file for the purposes of, once it's been archived, it can be reviewed again. And people can see the kind of evidence of RI or management involvement, and it will give you that audit trail and show when it was dealt with, and who it's been dealt with by. So obviously you're getting some real benefits there, not only from being able to integrate that substantive testing, as we've shown in the select module, but you're also getting the kind of review trail, very easy to keep on top of review notes. There's less risk of them getting lost. And obviously you've got that kind of nice, easy way of tracking how they've been dealt with. I think the other thing to point out as well, for reviewers, you're now in a cloud-based methodology. So as opposed to thinking about kind of some of the dangers, some of the risks that you get in a perhaps in either a desktop function or a paper-based review where version control can be an issue. You might have different sections of the file checked out to individual team members. There's much less risk of that happening here. These can be reviewed from anywhere by anyone on the team. You've got visibility from anywhere where you are. You don't have to be on the same site, and who's working on what, and there's no risk of different areas being checked out and different versions or things being lost. So again, you get a real kind of review sort of functionality benefit from adopting the paperless approach. And I think just probably one of the other areas that I wanted to touch on just before I perhaps hand back over to Inflo, just to sort of close out this section, just around I think we did touch on this briefly, but just around kind of how methodology updates are rolled out. So I think we touched on, I showed you how you were able to set up, select a particular content pack from the selection when you go into that Workpapers module. So those are continually updated, and I work on those. I create a duplicate from the old one. I update, that gets reviewed by our team in the same way as a paper methodology update would, and then I can then set those to live, and you're able as users to then pull that down. Once you're looking to set up a new file, so that is how we would roll out methodology updates and new content updates. The other thing I think that's probably useful to flag up is just in terms of kind of in-house methodology. So you do have the option here via your template management section here to add in. So you can enter this here, select a particular procedure, particular content back, particular procedure type, and you're able to add in template working papers. So if you have an in-house spreadsheet or an in-house template for documenting discussions or documenting a particular way of looking at things, you're able to add that in for teams so that when they set up a particular content pack, that's in there. So you've got the Mercia methodology, but you've also got your own kind of in-house control and able to roll those out as you wish. I'll just hand back over to David and Max now, just in case, just before we sort of move into the final bits of the day, just in case there's anything else that you wanted to pick up.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Really great run through. I think the key thing I'd just kind of summarize at the end of all of that is just to highlight that we saw some examples with the select module when we were showing the sampling approach within that. So Inflow has actually created a Mercia specific sampling approach that we can configure you to behind the scenes. There's also some dependency logic that we've developed. When you get into some group scenarios, there's some other bits that we've developed. But I just wanted to highlight, as part of this partnership, we are actually changing things and making sure that it fits and works for this approach. But the volume of needing to do that has actually been very limited, and that actually the design of Inflow from out of the box and the configurations and the options available within it has allowed, as Dave said quite early on in the webinar, has allowed the Mercia methodology to go into Inflow quite seamlessly. But there are these little bits here and there where, as part of this partnership, we are working closely together, and we're actually evolving things where we need to keep that fit to remain really seamless going forward. So I just wanted to highlight that we saw glimpses of some of it here, and I just wanted to pull out, some of this is Inflow out the box. Some of it is Mercia content being written directly in as it was before. Some of it is a kind of a hybrid between the two. And I think during this presentation, we've highlighted some of those, but some of it, if you're not even noticing, oh, this bit's Inflow, this bit's Mercia, then that just goes to show how seamless that integration really is. But like I say, we've covered a lot of the detail here. I think we've shown the planning process at a very, very high level and how the work programs and advanced screens work together. We've shown the kind of the digital benefits of having review points and having progress tracking and all of that integration. So I appreciate we've covered quite a lot here today. I think it really requires some hands-on to really get familiar with it. There's a whole host of guidance out there. And I guess this is segueing nicely into where we're moving next. So I'll probably pause there before I steal the show of that next section.
Yeah, no, that's a nice segment there, David. So yeah, talking about sort of like, well, how do you get hands-on with this platform? How do you test Mercia in Inflow? And how did that look? So in terms of like, I mean, what's the journey look like? If you want to understand more about this, get hands-on with Inflow. If you're a new customer and use Mercia but have never used Inflow, we've got what we call our proven process, which is a 5-step process, which is how we work with firms to get them into the platform, see a demonstration, get hands-on in a demo engagement, and actually see how does this work on a real life audit. As I said, it's a proven process because hundreds of firms have been through that journey, and to evaluate and understand whether Inflow and Mercia is the right platform for them. So if you're interested in learning about sort of what that looks like, get in touch with us after this webinar, and we can set you up on a free trial where you can actually get hands-on and see how does this Mercia methodology that I know and I'm familiar with look like an Inflow, and what benefits am I going to get. If you're an existing Inflow customer and use Mercia as well, good news is that it's a very similar process, but it's a lot quicker because you're already on the platform, you know how to use it. We can just set you up with a few workpapers engagements, get the Mercia methodology switched on. So again, you can go through and trial what does that look like on a demo engagement. So again, for both camps on this call, if you want to get hands-on, get in touch with us afterwards, and we can look to get you in touch with one of our digital audit team who can support you through that process. That's my role. And I've worked for many firms, big and small, who have gone through that journey. And as I said, it's guided by our experts who all have an audit background. And even when implementing, we've got a full audit implementation team that will support you with training, implementation support, helping you with template manager, and take you through that whole process start to finish. So you're not on your own. Common question I get is, common concern is it looks very different to what we're used to in terms of the modern workflows. But as we've hopefully shown, is that it's very intuitive, starting top to bottom. And one of the main reasons as well that we had this partnership is because we had a lot of firms that loved using Mercia and were very familiar with it and didn't want to move away from that methodology, but they also wanted to get the benefits of a modern cloud-based tool, especially Inflow, which is really at the peak of innovation when it comes to audit platforms. And we brought that together so those firms can have the Mercia that they know and love in a platform that allows them to get those efficiencies there. When it comes to actually support tickets, and Dave, I'll probably look at you. All the sort of technical functionality support that all goes through Inflo. All the onboarding support, that's guided by our specialist teams that can help you get up to speed with the platform. But then as usual, any sort of like methodology related questions, Mercia specific questions, they all get routed through the usual channels that you're familiar with Mercia. So you still get to work with the Mercia team that you're used to and have built a relationship with as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to second that, Max. Yeah, the usual kind of channels. Mercy's got its technical query function, for example, where you can kind of come with more sort of very specific, complex audit questions. Obviously, the methodology, the manuals team are available as well, and we are able to assist with methodology queries. And you've got as Max touched on, you've got the support ticket function within Inflow to cover the kind of the questions around the platform. Obviously Max and his team to deal with the onboarding side of things.
Yeah. And then even on top of that, we've got lots of inbuilt resources in Inflow, knowledge resources, e-videos, our release hub, so you can see all the updates that we're releasing. And the nice thing about that is that as we're releasing updates, we're working with Mercia to see actually how can those updates that we're releasing to really enhance the platform also improve and enhance the methodology, and how can we leverage those updates in the methodology. So again, working hand in hand to give you the best of both worlds. Cool. So that's it on implementation and the support packages. We've got a few questions that have come through in the chat. So I think now's probably a good time to do that live Q&A. Some of which I've answered with written responses. There's two here, which are what are the current packs on offer in Inflow? So we touched on them briefly, Dave, when you got into the platform, but just for Luke, can we confirm what are the Mercia packs that are available at the moment?
So the Mercia packs that are available at Inflow, we've got obviously the main kind of UK audit. So that really just covers your main kind of corporate audit for companies, groups, large and small. We have also got some specialist audit manuals, which we put in at the moment. There's 4 of those which are available at the moment. That's charities, academies, pension funds, and LLPs.
Great, perfect. And another question is the product being rolled out and is it suitable for the Republic of Ireland market?
So at the moment, no, this is UK based. ROI. Well, I'll sort of I don't want to make too many promises, but we are looking at ROI. I think kind of from an initial assessment. Obviously, there's a bit of work there to kind of review and check areas that are different. But as I'm sure people will be aware, there's quite a lot of crossover between UK and ROI audit. So yeah, that is certainly something. We're very much at the kind of early stages of this. But yeah, we will be looking to bring in. We've also got an international manual as well that we are working on and looking to be able to make available as soon as we can.
Great,
I was just going to
perfect.
say one of the other distinctions is around groups. I don't know if you mentioned that earlier. Sorry, I was skimming through the questions that we'd answered as well. Is that you don't need a separate pack for groups. Groups is included within the same pack, so it's dynamically bringing in group content based on whether you've set it up as a group or not. So I've seen other out there kind of will pick the group methodology separately, but that's not needed here. So I don't know if that was said before. Apologies, but I just wanted to call that out.
Yeah, the groups functionality is really strong within Inflow in terms of being able to share planning, the advanced screens, the risk assessment, the group scoping, all from that consolidated entity pushed down into the subsidiary. So again, a lot of efficiencies to be gained there, and Mercia have taken advantage of that functionality as well, is my understanding. Another question I had as well, Dave, was, I mean, specifically, like say, obviously, there's a big change. I mean, for one of my firms, which I've had before, which was there's a change from in sort of the risk assessment approach as well. So, firms were familiar with like the risk assessment form within Mercia, and obviously, Inflow takes a slightly different approach to that with the risk and response screen, and not being able to let you move forward through to fieldwork until you've done a actual thorough risk assessment and really understood your audit plan. So, how did Mercia go about sort of like making that or like adopting that change in process, and what benefits do you see it bringing?
So, I mean, I think in an ideal world, we would want using, I think audit teams in an ideal world would want to complete their risk assessment prior to sort of moving on. We do think it's best practice. Those of you that are familiar with the Mercia kind of paper methodology, you'll be familiar with the B40 forms, and then you've got your kind of overall risk assessment form, which then links back to your individual kind of audit plan areas. I think in practice, this does bring in the way that we've done it does bring an efficiency gain here. For starters, you're able to, leverage the technology and use that scoping function to cover some of the ground that's required in terms of working out the kind of different risk and response areas. So there are some efficiency gains there, less risk of missing out, and also it does bring together all those B40 forms. So instead of having to complete kind of an individual form for each area and have that sort of slight challenge in terms of oversight, where you've got multiple forms, these all, as we demonstrated earlier on, it all kind of runs off the the one area. So we do believe that there's a efficiency gain there. What I would say as well is that all our products, we always strive to be compliant with the ISAs. So fundamentally, although there's a slight change in kind of the way that the nuts and bolts way you might call it, the mechanical way you might call it of doing things, fundamentally this it still is an ISA-driven audit. So really, we're looking at those. It is driven by the requirements of 315, 330, in the same way that any audit would be. So it is. I would argue it's kind of slightly more of a cosmetic change, really, than a sort of wholesale methodology change. It is bringing that kind of efficiency gain in, which is one of the reasons why we're quite excited about bringing this in, and it is bringing that higher quality approach as well. So you've got everything in one place. You've got oversight. You're able to visualize much better the areas of the audit you need to be looking at by working off that scoping phase. And it is also encouraging you to, from a quality perspective, to make sure that you're clear on strategy, you're clear on risk assessment. It is obviously teams might point to, well, we want to get ahead and we want to start doing things, but I guess you're balancing that off against the risk that you've got to go back and change things or change areas. And you've got some lengthy kind of documentation. You've got lengthy, ways to kind of have conversations with management, as opposed to getting that approach nailed down, set out and agreed upon early on. So yeah, we very much see it as a higher quality, as a quality gain going forward.
Yeah, and I've had that feedback from my firms as well, Dave, who have already made that transition and saying that they like the visualization. It's just nice being able to see everything on one page, and more importantly, the clear linkage between the risks that we've identified on the left and how we're exactly addressing them in the responses that we're bringing in. And again, some of the more advanced firms that are leveraging those analytics really early on in the planning phase are really using it to tailor that risk assessment to mean that they've got a more efficient fieldwork section because they know exactly where that risk lies in that screen.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Max, as well. Using the analytics at the planning stage, it's not just about plugging them in. When you're at the substantive testing stage, it's not just about kind of, can we reduce sample size? It's also saying, can we run some of these analytics, some of these summarizations at the early stage and look at ways of detecting risks that we perhaps couldn't do in an old paper approach, or perhaps couldn't do without some of these tools attached. So you are getting a way of producing a more focused audit and enabling you to put your resources, into higher risk areas if you can identify those efficient ways of finding the needle in the haystack, as it were, of finding the riskier areas through doing those analytics.
Yeah, cool. And there's a question in the chat as well. And I mean, are Mercia adopting the newer advanced screens which are being worked on, so business processes, internal controls?
Yeah, absolutely. So, oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
I mean, feel free to talk about the direction of the Mercia content pack, but I was just going to clarify from a functionality perspective, the content pack. So when you're selecting Mercia content packs, that content pack will say which advanced screens come in, but not which version of the advanced screen comes in. So without getting too technical, when Inflo has developed a new version of the business processes, which is one of the examples that you put in the question, we have a business processes version 1 and a business processes version 2. that is actually controlled by the organization within their methodology management area. So it's the individual firm that chooses which version of business processes they use. That choice will come away later when it's only version 2. The version 1 we're moving away from, we're in transition period, but the Mercia content pack will choose is business processes present or not. It's then how the pack is written as to whether it's expecting it to be version 1 or version 2. So I just wanted to make that slight distinction to say, for example, the internal controls, we have a beta version of a Blazor controls screen, but it's the pack is saying, yes, have that screen or don't have that screen. It's up to the organization to choose which version. But I just, a bit technical, but I just wanted to make that distinction. And Dave, maybe to comment on, are you looking to adopt all of Inflo's newest versions, and how are you going to manage that transition?
Yeah, I think you covered it nicely, David. I mean, just at a kind of higher level, yeah, absolutely. The idea is that you'll be able to complete those business processes, and we want to be able to leverage that functionality. It's compliant with our methodology. Well, it's compliant with the kind of ISAs, but it's also aligns with our methodology. So yeah, it certainly is something that we'll be looking to bring in. As I mentioned earlier on, we're continually updating content packs. So that will form part of our review process, just looking at how we kind of integrate new functionality as it becomes available from Inflo.
Great. Cool. And then the last one is, how does the package deal with group audits? But I don't think you're going to be able to answer that in 4 minutes, but all I can say is that the platform deals with it really, really well in terms of being able to set up your group structures, ingest the group data. So whether that's top down, bottom up, again, that will make more sense when you get into the platform. But then also the being able to link from that consolidation, that group file down to your subsidiaries, the group scoping, the component materiality, advanced screens, all in line with ISO 600 revised. And again, the platform deals with it really well. As I said, we're not going to do it justice in 2 minutes, but if you want to send me an email directly, I've got a really nice recorded video that talks about all the group functionality within Inflo. So again, that open offer to anyone. If you want to know more about that, I've got a really nice video that talks about that as well. And with that, I'm going to wrap up, if that's okay, Dave and David. I've got 3 minutes left. I mean, it's like we've done this before. So what have we covered today then? So we spoke about sort of like some of the reason why firms are transitioning from legacy tools and paper-based workflows over to sort of Inflo and Mercia and those modern technology stacks. We've actually got into the platform and looked at how has Mercia embedded itself into Inflo and how we've leveraged the technology and the methodology to really bring a seamless end-to-end process when going through your audit files. We looked at some of the automations, we looked at some of the guidance that's embedded, we said about the advanced screens, we spoke about the risk assessment and how that's changed in Inflo, moving from that B40 to a sort of a more visual aspect. And then we've also had some questions around sort of like the support process and how you can actually get in and try this for yourself. So in terms of next steps, if you've got any other questions off the back of this, feel free to email any of us directly. We're going to send out the recording for this webinar to you, so you'll get a link to the recording and be able to watch this and share this with your firm internally. And as I said, if you are interested to actually get hands-on with how this looks and feels, that's the best way to get ROI. We can show you demo after demo, but you're only going to know if it works for you if you actually get in and test it yourself. Feel free to reach out to me or any of the team here, and we can get you in on either a free hands-on demo where you can trial this out, or if you're an existing customer, we can switch it on for a couple demo engagements for you to again see how it feels and how it looks. And with that, I'm going to conclude there. I just want to say thank you everyone for your time, for joining. Thank you, David, for going through the platform and answering people's questions. And yeah, I'll look forward to the next one.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.